Imagine you're driving down an American highway. You see the giant price sign. Cars are pulling into the station. One person is filling up. Another is walking inside for coffee. Someone else is buying a sandwich and a drink. And then you have a thought. Why don't I just buy the gas station? Think about it. People need fuel. They drive in, they swipe a card. The pump fills the tank. Money comes in. No complicated app. No viral marketing campaign. No product launch. Just cars showing up every day. It sounds almost too simple. But then ask yourself one question. How much of the money you see on that giant price sign actually belongs to the station owner? Because when you pay at the pump, you're not paying the owner a dollar-for-dollar profit. You're paying for a product whose retail price includes crude oil, taxes, refining, distribution, and marketing, and the economics of the station itself, U.S. Energy Information Administration. And that's where this gets interesting. Here's the first thing you need to understand. The gasoline is not the whole business. It's the traffic generator. A gas station can combine several businesses in one location. Fuel, convenience retail, food and beverages, automotive products, and potentially real estate. So when you're buying a gas station, you're not necessarily buying a place that sells gas. You're buying a location where thousands of vehicles can turn into thousands of transactions. The pump brings the customer onto the property. The rest of the business tries to monetize that visit. That's the machine. Before you spend $1, you need to understand what you're actually buying, because there isn't one universal gas station business model. First, the basic fuel station. You have pumps, a canopy, a small building, and limited retail. Fuel volume is the main driver. Second, fuel plus convenience store. Now the economics change. The same customer who came in for gasoline can also buy coffee, drinks, snacks, prepared food, tobacco products, lottery products, or automotive supplies. The fuel gets them onto the property. The store gets another opportunity to earn from the visit. Third, branded station. Now you're operating under a recognizable fuel brand. That can provide brand recognition and establish supply relationships, but the agreement can also come with requirements and costs. Fourth, the large fuel and food destination. Multiple pumps, large convenience store, coffee, prepared food, bathrooms, large parking area, sometimes additional services. At this point, calling it a gas station almost undersells what you're looking at. You're operating a traffic machine, and the economics depend heavily on how much traffic that machine can convert into profitable transactions. Let's say you find a gas station for sale. You see the asking price. Maybe your first instinct is, that's the price of the business. Not necessarily. Depending on the deal, you could be buying some combination of the land, the building, fuel dispensers, underground storage tanks and piping, the canopy and signage, convenience store equipment, inventory, brand or supply agreements, and most importantly, the location and its existing customer traffic. That's why two stations that look almost identical from the road can have completely different values. Imagine two stations, same number of pumps, same size store, same gasoline, but Station A sits beside a busy highway interchange. Station B sits on a quiet road with little passing traffic. They aren't the same business, because one has something the other can't simply order from a supplier: traffic. Now comes the question everyone wants answered. How much does a gas station cost? The honest answer is, it depends a lot. The purchase price can vary dramatically depending on the market, land value, fuel volume, store sales, condition of the property, and whether you're buying the real estate along with the operating business. And that's why looking at the sticker price alone can be dangerous. Imagine a station advertised for $1.5 million. You might think, okay, I need $1.5 million. But what happens next? You may need working capital, you may need inventory, you may need equipment upgrades, you may need repairs, and you may need money for improvements before the business operates the way you expect. So the real question isn't, how much is the gas station? It's, How much capital does it take to own and operate this particular gas station? And there's one part of the property you absolutely cannot ignore. It's underneath your feet. You see the pumps. But beneath the pavement can be an entire fuel storage system. Underground storage tanks, piping, leak detection equipment, spill protection, overfill protection, corrosion protection. These aren't optional details that you worry about after closing. EPA regulations require federally regulated underground storage tanks to meet requirements involving registration, leak detection, spill and overfill protection, corrosion protection, reporting, record keeping, and financial responsibility. States can also have their own requirements. US EPA +1. Why does that matter to a buyer? Because you're not simply buying equipment. You're potentially taking on environmental responsibility connected to that fuel storage system. EPA says owners and operators must have financial responsibility available for corrective action and certain third-party damages resulting from petroleum UST releases. US EPA +1. So before you celebrate the purchase, you investigate what's underneath the pavement. The most expensive problem at a gas station may be the one you can't see. Now, let's follow the money. Imagine you pull into the station and buy 20 gallons. For illustration, suppose the pump price is $3.10 per gallon. Your transaction is 20 times $3.10 equals $62. You just spent $62. But the station doesn't simply receive $62 as profit. The retail price of gasoline reflects several components. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the retail price includes crude oil, taxes, refining costs and profits, distribution and marketing. And those components change over time and from one region to another. EIA notes that crude oil is typically the largest component of the retail gasoline price. U.S. Energy Information Administration. So that $62 transaction is really money flowing through a supply chain. The station owner controls only one part of that chain. And that brings us to the question that really matters. What does the station actually keep? Let's use a deliberately simple example. Suppose, for illustration, the station sells 750,000 gallons per year. And suppose we assume an average 35 cents gross margin per gallon. That's not a claim about the average U.S. station. It's simply our hypothetical assumption. 750,000 gallons times 35 cents equals $262,500 in gross fuel margin.
Sounds pretty good. But that's not the owner's final profit.
You still have payroll, utilities, insurance, maintenance, payment processing costs, repairs, property costs, taxes, and plenty of other expenses. Now walk inside the store. A customer who came in for gasoline might buy a coffee, a drink, a sandwich, a snack, maybe something for the car. And suddenly the original fuel transaction has created another retail transaction. This is the part many people miss. The fuel creates the visit. The store tries to monetize the visit. The pump creates traffic. The rest of the property tries to capture value from that traffic. That's the business. From the driver's seat, a gas station looks incredibly simple. From the owner's office, it isn't. Start with labor. If you're operating long hours, you need people to cover those hours. Then there's electricity, lighting, heating and cooling, refrigeration, freezers, point-of-sale equipment, security systems, and maintenance. A broken piece of equipment doesn't just cost money to repair. It can also interrupt revenue. Then there is inventory. The store has products sitting on shelves. That inventory costs money before the customer buys it. And then there's another major issue: fuel price volatility. Gasoline prices can change quickly because the retail price is influenced by crude oil prices, refining economics, taxes, distribution, and other market factors. So the owner isn't operating in a world where today's economics automatically continue tomorrow. And then there's competition. The station across the street can change its price. A large chain can open nearby. A new convenience store can offer better food. A competitor can have a better location. You don't control all of those variables. You react to them. And now we reach the most important variable: location. Not the logo, not the color of the pumps, not even the size of the sign. Location. Imagine Station A sells 300,000 gallons per year. Station B sells 1.2 million gallons. For this illustration, assume they earn the same gross margin per gallon. Station B has 4 times the fuel volume. That does not mean 4 times the profit, but it creates something extremely valuable. Throughput, more vehicles, more fuel transactions, more opportunities for convenience store purchases, more opportunities to sell food and drinks, more opportunities to spread fixed costs across a larger volume of business. And that's why a location near a busy highway interchange can have radically different economics from a station on a quiet road. You can replace a refrigerator, you can remodel a store, you can install newer pumps, but you can't easily move the highway. Location is the moat. So let's build a fictional gas station. Again, this is an illustrative example, not a prediction of what a real station will earn. Suppose you acquire the business and property for $1,500,000. You set aside $100,000 for initial working capital and inventory, and another $150,000 for upgrades and equipment. Your initial capital requirement becomes $1,750,000. Now suppose the station sells 750,000 gallons per year. We assume 35 cents gross fuel margin per gallon. Fuel gross margin, 750,000 times 35 cents equals $262,500. Now suppose the convenience store generates $1,200,000 in annual merchandise sales. For our hypothetical example, let's assume a 30% gross margin. That gives $360,000 in store gross profit. Combine the two, $262,500 plus $360,000 equals $622,500. Sounds fantastic, but we're still not talking about take-home profit. Now let's assume annual operating expenses of labor, $180,000, property-related costs, $90,000, utilities, $42,000, insurance, $28,000, repairs and maintenance, $35,000, payment processing and related costs, $25,000, other operating expenses, $30,000, total operating expenses, $430,000. So, $622,500 minus $430,000 equals $192,500. Our hypothetical operating profit is $192,500 before financing, taxes, depreciation, and other adjustments. Now compare that with the $1.75 million of initial capital. A simple division gives roughly 9.1 years. But don't mistake that for a guaranteed 9-year payback. Real businesses don't behave like spreadsheets. Fuel margins change, sales change, labor costs change, equipment breaks, competition changes, property costs change, and environmental or regulatory issues can materially affect the economics. The spreadsheet is the beginning of the analysis, not the end. So, let's go back to the beginning. You were driving down the highway. You saw the giant gas price sign. You saw cars filling their tanks, and you thought the owner must be making money every time someone fills up. Now you know better. The gasoline is only one piece of the machine. The customer comes for fuel. The location creates the traffic. The convenience store creates additional opportunities to earn from that traffic. The property itself can be a major part of what you're buying. And underneath everything are costs and risks most customers never see. The tanks, the equipment, the employees, the inventory, the insurance, the maintenance, the competition, the financing, and the environmental responsibilities. So if you ever see a gas station for sale, don't ask, how much gas does it sell? Ask, how much traffic comes through? How many gallons does it sell? What is the actual fuel margin? How much does the store sell? Who owns the land? What are the property costs? How old are the tanks and equipment? What does the environmental due diligence show? How much does labor cost? And most importantly, what happens to the business if traffic drops? Because that's the difference between buying a gas station and buying yourself an extremely expensive job. The next time you pull up to a gas pump, you won't just see gasoline. You'll see the machine behind it. The gas isn't really the business. The fuel creates the traffic, while the location and the businesses around that traffic create the economics.